Have you seen it? So, okay, so do you have occupancy and people living in there? You're gonna have to have smoke detectors, you're gonna have fire protection. Do we have that?
You have smoke detectors in there.
Do you have fire protection?
It's not required under an existing building, according to Roberts. Now, okay, go ahead and finish.
Okay. No, I'm just curious,
Now,
what I understand.
I want to correct the record, never once did I make this
Okay.
township look bad. I was stating the facts that there was never anything before any of you sitting at this board knew about. And that included the fact that the building was never insured when I got here. It had been pulled off the insurance years ago, and I found that there was no insurance on the building. We were able to get it reinsured, but during that time, Reach Out was in there. Our fire department was working out of there with no insurance on it. So you have to make sure that the documents are managed correctly and that there's COs or occupancy permits on every building. Whether you live there, that's one type of permit, but there's also one to even be in the public building. And that's the one that Robert said was not issued. So we went down and pulled all the paperwork with the county prior to the project. And then that's where your vendor also found out that it's not, the bathrooms are not ADA compliant. So that is a step we took. So I'll go back to Robert for you guys, and I'll ask him for the certificate of occupancy. It's Robert Martin. He's the director of the operation there.
And Mr. Mayor, weren't you a fire chief back then?
During that period of time, yes, I was 203 to 2010.
And so there was an operating fire department out there, and there was no issues, right?
Didn't have any issues at that point in time.
The board of trustees at the time signed the deed and built the building, said they were the ones that would have been held responsible if there would have been a disaster. Not in
That's all I
Florida.
had, that's all I had. I just wanted to see somebody who was a fire chief at that time to know, because he was here.
Well, there's certain things you get involved with and certain things you don't. At that time, we wasn't dealing with the building of the fire station. That was done by someone. But once it was built, then we, we took possession of it. And it didn't happen on, I'm not sure the exact date, but that building was up when I was fire chief. That's all it is.
Okay, any other discussion on 59?
Yeah, so we're gonna get the washroom finished. We can't occupy it, I'll see how you get an occupancy permit if the washroom's not finished. But,
Didn't we apply for a grant to get new wash equipment for that?
Not as today, because you didn't approve AFG grants,
Okay.
because of the tabling in the last several years. But I'm unaware, but you guys might find different, but I'm unaware that a washroom has anything to do with the occupancy of a building.
okay.
I'm not.
The bathrooms where they park, and that's why the building inspectors make them go through the hoops, completed by ADA standards.
I'm just trying to understand, because it seemed like this has to do with me, payment of approved and completed projects by vendors. And then it says Station 59. Is there more than just the building, the project that was done for that building? Because it says various completed projects, it got plural. Is there only one project? And it says project by vendors. Were there more vendors involved? I don't have any invoices but from one vendor. I'm confused at that statement. Is there something missing out?
There's only one that I know.
Because it says payment of approved and completed projects by vendors.
Then strike the letter S off there. And-
Okay, I just wanted to make sure there was something I didn't get.
This never happened before, has it?
Of course not.
Okay, I'm okay. Well, did you get the answer though to that question? You guys got the answer to that question?
Any other old business, trustees? Okay, new business. Got a resolution, Jefferson Township Board of Trustees do hereby engage the services of Sturdick, Dowd and Turner LLP to represent and pursue legal action for recovery of damages from a third-party vendor. Mr. Wolf, would you like to walk us through this?
Mr. Mann have been very, very concerned with the actions or lack thereof of the former grant writer, and contractual issues have been violated as part of review by Mr. Peterson, Mr. Mann, and Mr. Wolf. In addition, there was an understanding that there would be a filing of a grant for SAFER, S-A-F-E-R, and emails back and forth, asking questions about, from both parties, making sure the application would get filed. At no time were you told not. Till the day of resignation of the contract, you were told that you did not and would not have a SAFER grant filed, which is what you hired the grant writer to do. And then in addition, the grant writer made a comment that you're not ready for such grant. Board of Trustees, you didn't hire a consultant to tell you what you're ready for, you're not ready for. This is federal money given to every fire department across the state if they want it, or the country. And you hired a grant writer to file the application, whether successful or not. Your success in the areas of the AFG grants, because of all of your factors of this community, would have put you in line to possibly be more successful to receive this grant. And Mr. Mann made reference to it, that at one time, there was a nearby community that this grant writer did write the grant for and was successful for, and we don't understand why. So Mr. Mann asked me to reach out to Mr. Peterson first, which we did, and then he said, because of our discussion, he said reach out to Sturdick, Dowd and Turner and see if there's any validity or possibility of this, or is it a waste of your time? Sturdick, Dowd and Turner said there is factors there that yes, there could be some action taken. At this point, because it's a legal issue, if you hire them, you cannot talk about this case from my comments forward until you meet with Sturdick, Dowd and Turner directly as Board of Trustees.
All right, move to adopt resolution, we'll call this 21-088. The Jefferson Township Board of Trustees do hereby engage the services of Sturdick, Dowd and Turner LLP to represent and pursue legal action for recovery of damages from a third-party vendor. Move to adopt.
I second the motion.
Discussion. Roll call, Ms. Edwards.
Trustee Mann?
Yes.
Trustee McLaughlin?
Abstain.
Trustee McGuire?
Yes. Motion passes.
Would you like to have me set up an executive session at the next meeting? To meet with Sturdick, Dowd, or just, will be the first of the year.
we're waiting for some resolutions.
You got it right there.
Did the message help you?
No, he didn't see it.
No, it's good.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Okay, next on the agenda, just gonna call this resolution number 21-089. The Jefferson Township Board of Trustees authorize an additional $12,000 for the services of Clemens, Nelson, and Associates for the investigation of human resources matter. This is related to a human resources investigation that's already ongoing. The fund code, we will move fund code 2111 I've got it written down here for you, Tracy.
Well, I mean, why do you have it written down? You gotta approve the resolution first,
Well, I'm just reading this through.
and then tell me where you're putting it up, and then where you're putting it in.
Okay, well, I move to adopt resolution number 21-089. Is there a second?
We had to have a second before we ask questions, right?
Correct.
That has changed.
No, that's the way it works.
Okay, I'm gonna give you a second.
Okay, we have the floor open for discussion.
Question. Why is this amount, I don't agree with the amount, why is that amount that high?
Well, the first, based on the invoicing that we got from the firm, they went through that initial amount pretty fast. So,
Yeah, you gotta.
You build a checkbook, yeah, definitely.
I'm thinking it's probably only gonna take 8,000, but I put a little extra in there so we don't have to do the third resolution to finish paying this thing out. So there's some cushion in this. I don't expect to spend 12,000 based on my conversations with the firm.
Okay, so, I got a question too. Whereas the Jefferson Township Board of Trustees designate blah, blah, blah to investigate the conduct of an employee of the Jefferson Township Fire Department and prepare necessary charges in conformity with Ohio Revised Code 505.38. 505.38, appointment of firefighting personnel. Has very little to do with what we're talking about here. And then the second one, 733.35 to 733.39 has to do all with municipalities. It has nothing to do with townships. It's point one. So I just, we're shooting at straws. Then, so we produced, and we had this meeting, you, Jim, conducted this meeting, set this meeting up when you knew, you asked me, and I have copies of this email, you asked me in email, when will you be available to have a meeting? Any day after 6. So you make this meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning, knowing I can't be there. Okay? And then, so I have to go beg and plead for the copy of the paperwork. I won't go into no details because I don't want to get in trouble. But no one signed the paperwork. I didn't sign it because I wasn't there. But you have come up with 11 pages of charges that you gave to this legal outfit. No one signed them. The person who wrote it, Steve Wolf, didn't sign it. The legal outfit that you mentioned in there, the one we just gave more money to, didn't sign it. So how is it a ongoing thing when nobody says, hey, stand behind this? But we're gonna spend thousands and thousands of the taxpayers' dollars to do this, but nobody signed it.
Well, the Ohio Revised Code you're questioning came off the first resolution that was given to us to use as a part of these proceedings.
By,
I can find out, it's either started down, I think.
outside legal, okay. So there again, you can't use, you didn't run this past Nathaniel, we don't wanna use free legal. We wanna use thousands and thousands of dollars, so, you know, we're paying more in this investigation than it costs us to pay the man.
Paid 5,000 already, and now it's 12.
You shouldn't even be discussing that much on the floor here. This could, I mean, this protects us, it protects the employee.
Protects us?
Quiet.
Okay.
Well, we got a blank in this resolution, so I don't know if you guys are gonna sign a resolution with a blank in it. And you can't fill the blank until you approve a transfer of funds. So that's my comment.
Okay, well, any other discussion?
Well, that's how we conduct business. We spend the money and then we try to move around to find out where we're gonna take it from. So that's doing this, Tracy is right down to how we operate.
Like I said, I can't do any transactions and you can hold me responsible for it and I don't care. I'm not gonna do something that's not proper because you guys want it that way. You may make the decision, but I'm not gonna do something improper and we have to be compliant. So the first thing you have to do is transfer the funds.
Well, first thing we're gonna do, we've got a resolution on the table, so any other discussion?
Like to bring this, make this 8,000 instead of 12.
Okay. So resolution number 21-087, Jefferson Township Board of Trustees authorize an additional $8,000 for the services of Clemens Nelson Associate, the investigation of human resources matters. Can we have a roll call, please?
Why didn't you let me vote on the first, why did you keep me out of the meeting the first time this happened?
I didn't exclude you from the meeting.
Yes, you
decided
did.
not to show up.
No, you specifically asked
That
me,
doesn't
we'd have to
have
make
to
a
do with
meeting,
this
and I said
resolution.
anytime after 6, so you make a meeting 8 o'clock in the morning. We had a meeting the night before, 6
What does
o'clock.
that have to do with this resolution? Nothing.
Okay, okay.
So are you gonna serve the blank or not?
The fund code will be 2111-220-360-3008. Funds will be pulled from 2111-220-190-0501 and 2111-220-360-3018.
You said 3018
Right.
and the other one. Okay, I'm gonna put in this line, then I'm putting 2111-220-360-3008. It's right now.
So next
Has
year,
$1,532.50. So how much of the funds are you gonna put in each of those lines? You gotta state that in order.
The 0501 is 8,700. The second line item, there's 4,000 there. So we only need 3,300 of that.
so going forward next year, when we try to schedule something, and if it contradicts with Jim's time and he can't make it, do I really give a rat's ass? Nope.
Okay.
This is how it goes.
You said 018. So just for the record, we're transferring $8,700 from 2111 to 20-190-0501
Correct.
to 2111-220-360-3008. And we're also transferring 3,300 from 2111-220-360-3018 to line item 2111-220-360-3008, which would add a total of 12,000. Why do we need 12?
Well, that's, I was just getting ready to say, we can scratch that line item since we changed the resolution.
Okay, so we're just transferring from the payroll clerk line? So we just transfer, 87,000 from the,
8,700.
I'm sorry, 8,700 from, 2111 dash. I just have to have it so I can do it right.
Can you change this to,
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
220-190-0501.
And then we're funding it.
And we're gonna put it into 2111-220-360-3008. That's a total of 8,700. Oh, we could just do 8,000, I'm sorry.
That's not what you were asking? Okay, so 8,000.
8,000.
Okay.
That number should be 8,000, that's been transferred. Okay, I'm ready now. Go ahead with the next step.
Roll call.
Trustee Mann,
yeah,
trustee McGuire,
Yes.
trustee McLaughlin.
Well, we'll have to vote on the first one, so I guess I'll vote no on this one.
Okay, motion passes.
Okay, here's for signature. Please initial on that 8,000, just twice up there.
Two initials. Okay, next resolution is 21-090. Jefferson Township Board of Trustees do hereby engage contracted township grant writer Gatchel Grant Resources LLC to submit an application to Safer Grant to fund a fire department recruitment and retention program with the Safer grant program application period opens. Anybody like to make a motion to adopt this resolution?
I'll make a motion to adopt this resolution 21-010.
Do we have a second? All right, I'll second the motion to get this opened up for discussion. Mr. Wolf, can you give us some background on this?
Yes, the SAVER grant gives financing to a community to support salaries for firefighters. There are two divisions of that grant. One is for full-time employment. The second one is for volunteer or part-time recruitment programs. And by hiring Gotcho will be able to apply in your name for both types of grants. The grants are presently, because of COVID, the company used to have a step-down funding, a global match. They used to pay 70% year one, 70% year two, 30% year three, and then year four, it's 100% responsibility, and you could never end it. In other words, you weren't allowed to lay people off if you couldn't afford year four. That's all been revamped. So the last 2 years, this community did not file for the grant that should have. And you understand why you've got legal counsel on the one. Because the federal government made it 100% each year for 3 years. And then if you cannot afford in year four, then you have the right to do what you have to do in terms of attrition or layoff. The idea is to fund the money each year as though you're paying out the salaries, and then you've got a labor budget to go year 3, 4, 5, and 6, so you don't have to ask for a levy or any additional monies from your general budget. Now, what does it cover? 100% of the salary, benefits, workers' comp. Basically, you get a full-time employee at no money per year for 3 straight years. Ohio Revised Code, or I'm sorry, NFPA code for a department of this size, and this was fact-checked, to have two people 24 hours a day that are full-time, you have to apply, or it's recommended that you apply for 8 full-time positions. Trotwood next door went for 15 and got 15, because they have a larger number of residents to take care of. The 8 would give you full-time paramedic firefighters, 2 of them, in your district, 24 hours a day. Right now, you don't have that. You may have 1 paramedic or get lucky to have 2 that are during the day. Come weekends and nights, sometimes you have no paramedics. That's because you run a small department that's hard to compete. This puts you right there with the ability. Now, the idea is, when you have full-time employees like that, believe it or not, the salaries are less than having all part-time. That's why the city of Clayton have almost gone exclusively full-time. Nothing to do with this grant, full-time. Most of the cities are going full-time because of the overtime and the extra problems they have with staffing, and they promise the residents to have the protection. If you promise the residents you're going to have the protection, how do you do it with part-time employees that have other restrictions not being here? Hence, we learned a lesson in November of last year. COVID hit us. And at one time, we had our assistant chief in the hospital. We had 12 to 14 members out, and we barely had enough to open up the doors. If we get another pandemic, you don't have anybody to call in. But when you have a full-time staff on board, you're able to call those others in that aren't sick. So you're balancing your expense. Now, you won't need as many part-timers on your roster, meaning you don't have to pay as much training and all that for the others, because you're going to have that stability. If only you had 2, and you get down to a budget situation where you only have 2 people, You've got 2 paramedics in your district saving lives. So this is a hot, sought-over grant. City of Riverside went for it and got it 3 or 4 years ago, and it has been tremendous for them. And I'll give you the chief's name to go visit with him if you'd like. Godchild will manage the entire process from start to finish. Same as they're supposed to be doing for your current AFG grants, your current SAFER grant, or your current CARES Act, and the ARPA, which they're being prevented from doing. But by hiring this firm, engaging them, you already have them hired as your general grant writer. This engages them to do the SAFER grant for 2022. If you don't get the grant, you don't owe any money to them for a fee. If you get the grant, there'll be a fee that they charge for managing that grant, but they keep you compliant from start to finish. And it's the only way I know that this community is going to get full-time people 24/7 to protect the people that live here. And that's the biggest key that you have. Or you're going to face a lot more mutual aid, which you've been struggling with, and you wait 10, 15 minutes for a medic to come from somewhere else. You give yourself a better chance to save a life by going possibly this program. Now, the key to this, last thing, trustees, is you don't have to take the money. If you find out at the end of the grant period you got it, but financially you don't want to go through with it, there's no penalty to withdraw. The second thing is you may not want 8, maybe you want 3, 4, 5. You can look at your budget and decide what you want before you engage the grant. But there is no penalty to you to return, or you don't receive the money. They reimburse you on the money. And so that's what this grant is all about. If you would have applied in year 1 when it went 100%, you would have had it. I know you would have had it with your numbers. Didn't happen. Your grant writer didn't file for you last year. You should have. If there's 8 people at an average of, say, $100,000 for total budget, that's $800,000 times 3 years. Your community may have lost out on $2.4 million of grant